Hi and welcome or welcome back to another knitting podcast episode. I'm so happy to be back. I took an impromptu break from social media, and while it has been really beneficial, I feel like now I just have way too many things to discuss with you. And I think what we're going to do is to just embrace the feature length movie aspect of this video. I, for one, really like longer podcasts. I have, of course, my finished objects, my works in progress. Also, I have some sewing projects that I want to show you, and a surprising amount of acquisitions, at least for me. So I hope I'm catching you in a really good crafting mood. I hope your summer has been going wonderful so far, and let's just get into it. As always, if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing so you don't miss my future videos. Before we start, I wanted to take a second to thank everybody who has reached out to me after my last video, both privately and in the comments. Please note that I read every single message, and I'm really sorry that I wasn't able to respond to all of them, but your words of kindness and encouragement just mean the world to me. I'm once again really grateful to be a part of this community, to be able to knit and make these videos for you, so thank you for being here. I'll start with the finished object that has already proven itself to be a favorite. I got a ton of wear out of it this June, and this is of course my new Palme Tee, which I'm wearing right now, and I'm super pleased with it. It goes straight into my thankfully growing collection of banger knits. This t-shirt is a design by Lene, and the recommended yarn is Sandnes Garn Lene, which is exactly what I used. I want to repeat myself just for a second here to tell you once again how much I enjoy working with Sandnes Garn Lene. It's my favorite summer yarn, and the stitch definition, especially on lace, is amazing. I really like the drape of this yarn and just the coolness of it. Even though it has multiple strands of like viscose and linen and cotton in it, it doesn't snag and doesn't split when you knit with it compared to some other summer yarns, which I'm gonna get into later in the video when I show you my works in progress. But this one is just a classic, considering that this is my second Palme Tee and my first one was also made out of Lene 2 years ago. For just the amount of wear that this t-shirt got during these 2 years, I can say that, it holds up beautifully. For this version, I wanted to have a darker t-shirt because this one is, silver, and it kind of washes me out when I wear it with lighter pants, which I tend to do in the summer. I wanted to have a darker version and something that is both casual and really kind of evening appropriate. My original Palme Tee is of course a favorite as well, and interestingly enough, it's the only project I was ever complimented on by a complete stranger in real life. I just had somebody come up to me once and they asked if this was hand knitted, if I was the one who knit it. They also wondered how much work goes into a project like that, so it was really cool to chat about my knitting with a stranger. It kind of made my day then, so it's a really special t-shirt. Unfortunately, as time went on, I wasn't able to wear it as much because it became a bit uncomfortable. When my weight fluctuates, I immediately, like when I gain a little bit of weight, the first place I gain weight is my arms, or like this kind of chicken wing section. It got a bit too tight in this area, so for my second Palme Tee, I wanted to make it a bit more roomy and account for any fluctuations in weight, because I do intend to wear my knits for a very long time, and even though it's not as fun to, think about gaining weight or losing weight or like having any changes in your physique, it's something you have to account for if you're planning to make an heirloom or like banger-worthy project. So for my new Palme Tee, I did go up a size. My original one was knit in size small, and this one is size medium. But because I was making a size medium, I knew I had to account for a different length of the lace yoke section because it's intended for a bigger chest circumference than mine, and I didn't want it to be too kind of low. So what I did is that I skipped the last couple of eyelet repeats of the lace yoke chart and did some stockinette rounds instead, and then I split for body and sleeves. And I also didn't do any decreases here at the sleeves, I just kept them straight. And my other modification I did was to do the twisted rib instead of regular ribbing, just because I kind of wanted to add it in this case. And I didn't do an Italian bind off on the edges, I just did a regular long tail cast off, because my gripe with Sandnes Garn Lene is that I can't get my Italian bind off to look neat in this yarn. Maybe it's a me issue, I completely realize that, but I just find it to be loose and tight in different spots, so I can't get it to be even. So I just did a regular long tail cast off instead, and I think it looks fine. Let me know if you have a similar issue with this yarn, or maybe it is just me, but I think what happens is because this yarn is not as stretchy as like wool yarns, and it doesn't have this like stretchy give to it as something with nylon, for example, you don't have this kind of consistent grip on it when you pull the needle through. But apart from that, I knit this t-shirt exactly per pattern. I used 5.5 balls of wool in total. The recommended amount for my size, for like size medium, was I think 6, so it was a bit less than the pattern suggested, but as I said, I did skip a lace repeat, so maybe that's because of that. I gotta be honest, when I first blocked it, I hated it. I looked at it in the mirror and I was like, oh my god, it looks like lingerie or like a nightgown or something, because the lace is black. It just looks so tacky to me. I regretted my dark yarn choice, but then I took a deep breath and I realized that it's probably my kind of post-project criticism flare-up speaking, and it was, because after a couple of days has passed, I tried this t-shirt on again and I absolutely loved it. I think the fact that the lace is black makes it both really kind of casual if I need to, but at the same time, this t-shirt is like something I won't be ashamed to wear to like a wedding. Overall, I'm just really pleased with this knit. And of course, Lene has other designs that have the same overall construction, but the lace motif is different, so check them out. I do really recommend them. I am working on another design from her that is really similar to the Palme Tee, and I think in the future I will definitely make another one because it's just one of my favorite summer garments. I'm really sorry for the abrupt cut. It was just way overambitious of me to think that I can record a whole podcast after getting like 2 hours of sleep the night before, so now I'm back and really well rested. Also, the background has changed because I got peonies instead of lilies. My next finished object is also really, really special. I am really proud to have it finished finally and proud to present it to you. This is my finished Sirena sweater. I planned this project back in January and it was a journey for sure, because as you may know, I started knitting it in a completely different yarn that got discontinued halfway through me knitting it. I already finished the front panel and the back panel before I found out that I basically can't get any more of this yarn, and it was really frustrating because I spent like, I don't know, 2 weeks doing swatches and trying to pair this yarn with something else because I was holding it double, and it was quite unique in the sense that it's this really pearly viscose yarn with some alpaca fluff, and it's both like pearly but heathered. It's a really beautiful yarn, but it was such a pain to try and find, you know, a pairing for it or to substitute it with something. So thankfully, this project was rescued by a subscriber who basically gifted me a different quantity of yarn to restart this project with. So if you're watching this, thank you again, because you have completely turned this project and like the vibes surrounding it around for me. In hindsight, I'm a lot happier with the yarn choice I ended up with because I was holding this original yarn double, and now I realize it probably would have been too heavy for this sort of cable sweater, so everything worked out. The story definitely has a happy ending. So I used Katia cotton merino held together with a mohair that I had in my stash, silk mohair. It actually was a bit darker than the Katia yarn, so it gave me this absolutely beautiful melange effect. I really like the colorway I ended up with. It kind of reminds me of buckwheat. Like, it wouldn't be an Andolini Knits video if I haven't mentioned which food my projects remind me of. This time it's buckwheat. We already had, I think, beets with horseradish and ground beef and Haagen-Dazs and stuff like that, pistachios as well. So yeah, this time it's buckwheat. And I'm actually kind of curious if you, like, most of my audience is not from Eastern Europe, so I'm really curious to know if you actually eat buckwheat as a side dish. It's super popular here. It's like a staple and I really love it, but I'm always like weirded out realizing that other cultures and like cuisines don't use buckwheat as much, apart from like adding it to flour or like fiber supplements. So let me know. Okay, anyway, back to the yarn. So I used 11 balls of the Katia yarn. I have just a tiny bit left over, which I'm not going to throw away because I really liked working with this yarn, and I think I'm going to keep this little ball in case I want to make a swatch for a different project before like I commit to a full quantity of this yarn. So I'm gonna
keep it. And this is all I have left of the mohair. I used about 5 25-gram balls of this mohair yarn, and I did have some more left over, but I destashed it because I checked, and this colorway is also discontinued. It's from the same store that I bought my original Gerst Sirena yarn from. So yeah, I just decided to let it go and not have the headache of trying to find a similar shade if I want to make a project from this mohair. So it's just bringing joy to somebody else now. But I did, as you can see, win at Yarn Chicken, which is great, and I was knitting size medium. So I think that's all of the technical info, like relatively technical, but I do have one regret about this project, and I really wish I would have sized down my needles, because I was knitting this on the recommended 5.5mm needles, and I didn't account for the fact that this Katia yarn really drapes after blocking. Like, the fabric itself becomes really drapey. I wouldn't say that it stretches or like loosens up a lot, but the fabric has a lot more drape to it after blocking than before, and I didn't really see it in the swatch. It was like too small to notice any difference. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but my sweater doesn't have as much structure as, for example, the one in the pattern picture, so I wish, again, I would have gone half a size down, and I don't think trying to intentionally felt the sweater would help, because this yarn is mostly cotton, and I think I would just completely ruin the sweater by trying to do something like that, because probably the silk mohair would felt, but the chain net cotton yarn would not. I don't want to do any experiments, like I'm fine with it. It's just that when I tried it on for the first time, it did look just a tiny little bit frumpy on me. Like, I wasn't expecting it to be as loose, so I'm kind of getting used to it. But there is actually an upside to this, and it's that this sweater is unbelievably soft. It's just so pleasant to wear. It's just the tactile experience of it is amazing. I love wearing it, and I did manage to wear it on some colder summer days already, even though it doesn't look like exactly as I expected, because I was working on this project for basically 6 months, or like envisioning this project for 6 months, that I probably have a really unrealistic vision in my head of how it was supposed to turn out. But I still need to give myself some credit of powering through with this project, for like persevering despite all of the frustrations I had to encounter along the way. And if I want to make a more structured version, I can always just knit it again in a different yarn. My experience with this pattern was wonderful. I really recommend it. The instructions are really easy to follow, as well as the charts for the cable motifs. And I also really like that she added this cable that basically repeats every right side row, or like every second round. It becomes your guide on like how far along you are in the other cables, and it's really easy to keep track of them. At some point I just memorized the pattern and didn't have to look at the chart at all, so it's a really nice kind of thoughtful touch on the designer's part. And the only modification I made for my Sirena sweater is that I changed the decrease rate for the sleeves, because I originally followed the decrease rate suggested, or like instructed in the pattern, and my sleeve ended up being way too wide. I was afraid that I would run out of yarn before I can finish the second sleeve, so I changed the decrease rate, or like made it a lot more tapered than the original, and knit the other sleeve that way, and I was much more happy with it. So I frogged the first sleeve and redid it as well, and considering I have like minuscule amount of yarn left, I think it was a good decision, because otherwise I would have ran out of yarn before I could finish both sleeves. Otherwise I followed the pattern pretty much exactly, but I did make some mistakes in these like center cables. I'm pretty sure that I missed a couple of like cable turns somewhere here, especially at the back. Like, this diamond is super duper crooked, but I don't think anyone would notice. It's going to be a little secret as usual. So I'm really pleased with this pattern. I again really recommend it, and I'm so happy that this project is finally finished and is surrounded by good vibes and good memories instead of being this frustrating experience. So yeah, super happy with my Sirena sweater. While that's all for my knitting finished objects, I do have 2 sewing projects that I want to share with you, and the first one is my finished puff Peplum blouse. This is a pattern by Sunday School Designs, or Sunday School Patterns, probably. I'm gonna put the Etsy listing in the description if you want to check it out. And first of all, I want to rave about this pattern, or like instructions, for a little bit, because for the price, she or they go into so much detail, and it's so approachable for me as a beginner to understand what I need to do and like all the steps I have to follow. I first tried to sew a blouse from this pattern last year, and while that project didn't work out for a couple of reasons, mostly because of my like inexperience, I made some mistakes and I chose a really hard to work with linen fabric that had a really slippery grain, and it was really hard to cut it properly and hold the pieces together properly, like pin them properly. It was a mess, but I did finish that first attempt. And while I wore it only like a couple of times, because then I got kind of too ashamed of how sloppy the finished object looks, I do want to keep it for, I guess, posterity's sake, just so I can have it as a reference, because it basically was my first proper sewing project. So I got the pieces for my new remastered puff blouse back in May, but I was putting off starting to sew this project because I really didn't want to mess up my wool that I have chosen for this. I have this beautiful kind of costume wool, I think you can call it, that I got from my sewing classes, and I would have liked a lot to make something longer with it, like a dress perhaps, like even the peplum could have been extended for a dress, but I didn't have enough fabric to do that, so I just neatly and slowly cut the pieces and then left this project for like 2 months until I was mentally ready to start working on it. I finally got around to it, and I think, again, if I can say so myself, did a wonderful job, or like not wonderful, a really neat job. Like it was the best I can do. So the neckline originally had bias binding edge, but I instead kind of freehanded a facing and attached it, and then like top stitched on top of it to have it be a bit more elevated, which I hope worked. I tried to really take my time to iron the seam in a way that it's visible from the wrong side, and like from the right side it looks like there's no seams. I think this project turned out so well mostly for 2 reasons. As I said, the pattern is great and really well written, and also this wool fabric is really forgiving. It's so easy to keep it straight and like keep it on grain. It was a blast cutting it, especially compared to the linen I used in my first blouse. So it's a shame that I can't get any more of this fabric. I do have some scraps which I'm planning to use for small like DIY things, but in general I really liked working with it, and I really hope that the thrift gods will bless me someday and I will find something similar in a thrift store. But overall it was a joy to sew this pattern, knowing that the fabric is rooting for me. My biggest concern was regarding all the gathers I had to do for this project, for the sleeve cap, also for the peplum, which goes like along the whole of the waist. It was a bit stressful, but I do have a little like life hack or tip, which I think is not used widely for probably a very valid reason, but it's something that really helps me like speed the process of making this blouse. It's basically adding an elastic or like shirring thread and like shirr the seam allowance before you start doing the gathers. It kind of cinches in your fabric and does these like preemptive gathers for you, so it's much easier to manage your gathers and make sure that they're evenly spread out across your piece of fabric that you're attaching them to. So I really recommend it, but I did have to go with like a seam ripper and rip out all of the shirring thread after the fact, because it was really bothering me and it was quite bulky. Since I wanted to bind my seam allowance for the pieces where I gathered the fabric, I needed to just cut off and really remove all of the extra bulk and the extra thread. I am super proud of the inside of this blouse. I'm holding it upside down, but I think you know what I mean. I'm not really proud of this portion where I just, use some bias binding to do the center front, but the places where I bound the seam allowance look so neat. Same with the sleeves. This was so fiddly and so time consuming. I think doing the bias binding took me just as long as like sewing the rest of the blouse, but it's really worth it because now it's not scratchy against my skin. There is no extra bulk. The sleeves are not puckering in any way. So I'm again super proud of this project. This project also took quite a bit of prep because I don't have an overlocker and I didn't want to do French seams on this quite bulky fabric, and I also didn't want it to fray. So what I did was go along all the seam allowance and added this strip of interfacing, and then I zigzagged on top of it, so now it's quite sturdy. I'm still yet to figure out what to wear this blouse with because I mostly wanted to make it to, first of all, use this wool fabric and also to remake the first project I ever did, basically first garment I ever sewn. I need to just play around with some things in my wardrobe to make sure that I have a good outfit to go with it, but overall I'm super pleased with this project, and it did give me some encouragement to continue sewing, which is great because usually I don't enjoy sewing as much as I do knitting. It's way too messy and stressful compared to just, sitting down with knitting in your lap watching a movie or something. And also the learning curve is so steep that I feel like a dumbass every time I sit down in front of a sewing machine. I can't wrap my head around most sewing techniques, and it feels so inaccessible to me. So the fact that I got some motivation out of this project to keep going and start to love sewing more was really, really special. So I definitely had an itch to continue sewing after finishing the blouse, but it was right around the time when we got a short heat wave here in Lviv, so I was really not in the mood to cut the fabric, which I would have had to do on the floor because my table is not big enough. I instead did something super quick. I made this bow. I attached this elastic hair tie to it, but it's really sloppy. It's basically just to try it on. I think what I would do for a more permanent solution is buy a wider metal hair clip to sew it on the back side of the bow to wear it as a hair clip. For now it's on the elastic and I really, really love it. I was trying really hard to kind of nail the dimensions to not make it look too clowny or too ridiculously oversized. This fabric I used is just gorgeous. I'm so upset that I don't really have more of it to work with. This is wool and silk crepe. I love this fabric. It is a bit hard to work with, but the drape of it and this color specifically and this texture is just so lovely. I really would have loved to have a blouse made out of it, but at least I got to use the scraps for a nice accessory, which I think would go with basically everything. I really like to wear bows in my hair ever since I made my December bow. It makes me feel really kind of feminine and girly in a good way. So I'm really pleased to now have one made out of fabric, especially this gorgeous fabric. I wanted to make a hair bow for months now because every time I visit some kind of fast fashion store, mostly to buy socks, I don't really buy anything from fast fashion stores, but if I pass by them, I usually see a lot of satin scrunchies and bows and sewn hair accessories that look actually pretty easy to make at home yourself. So I'm really pleased that I finally got around to it. I didn't use any sort of pattern for this. I mostly used the shape of my December bow as a guide. Instead of having this bow be in one piece as a long ribbon with 45-degree angles, I cut the ties and the bow separately and then just wrapped them together with this piece of fabric. For my first attempt, I used an interfacing on this fabric because I thought that it's kind of too floopy to, look neat in a bow like this. But this was a mistake because my first attempt looked like a huge clown bow. It was this oversized bow tie which was so structured and so stiff. It just made me laugh and giggle to myself before I realized that I don't have enough fabric to cut another version. So what I had to do was to just I don't think you can use the word frog to describe sewing projects, but yeah, I had to rip out all of my seams and then slowly unpeel the fusible interfacing, which was really tedious and was a painful experience, but I don't think you can see all the struggles in the finished object. I think it looks fine, at least as good as those bows you can find in I don't know, Zara and stuff. So I'm really happy with this project, and I want to do another sewing project, this time a proper sewing project. I already have my fabric picked out. I got this beautiful striped linen at a thrift store last year. It has these like vertical stripes. I'm sure there is a name for this sort of weave, but I unfortunately don't know it. It has these blue threads and these beige threads, and it doesn't really look blue from afar. It just looks really interesting and dimensional, and I really like the color combo of these little stripes. So I'm gonna be making a dress out of this fabric. I have enough for a dress, and the pattern I'm going to be making the dress from is this Jackie dress from PatternsByLiliya, who is actually a friend of mine, and I guess I need to disclose that she sent me this pattern, but believe me, it was against my will. I was coerced into it. I really wanted to buy the pattern myself and support her because she is such a talented pattern designer. She is just incredibly talented. I'm really, really proud of every pattern she releases. She shares how much work goes into, you know, designing a sewing pattern, especially since her patterns have a really wide size range. They go from size 0, like US size 0, until, let me see, size 34, which is 155 centimeter bust. So it's a lot of work. I'm not like trying to advertise or anything. I'm just genuinely really, really rooting for her. And the pattern includes instructions for both a sleeveless like A-line dress with a tie at the waist and also for a top. And I think at some point I'm going to be making the top as well, but I really want to have a dress out of this fabric as soon as possible. And I did print out all of the pattern pieces, which there was like a lot of them, and like, Lilia, you owe me a glue stick, okay? Because I used a whole glue stick which served me for like, I don't know, a year and a half through all the trials and tribulations. It was with me, but then your pattern just heartlessly used it up, you know, just the whole thing. So you owe me. Anyway, jokes aside, I'm really looking forward to starting this dress. I think I'm gonna do a mock-up first out of like old bed sheets or something. I know they're not the same like weight as this fabric, but I still want to test it before cutting into this fabric, which is, even though it is thrifted, it is kind of special to me. I don't want to ruin it, so we'll see how it goes. So with that, I think I'm done with the finished objects and we'll be moving on to my works in progress. So first, I wanted to update you on the projects I was working on during my June vlog. The first one is my Tulipan Tee, which is a similar Lene design to the Palme Tee, but it has a bit of a different construction to it, and it's basically finished. I just need to add a couple more centimeters to the body and then start doing the hem, but the only reason I'm not finishing it like right now is because I'm waiting for my friend to try it on, because I'm not knitting it for myself, it's a knit for my friend. So once she tries it on and we're sure about the length we want to go for, I'm gonna finish it, I think, in just an evening or something, because it is quite a quick knit. Like, my favorite thing about the Palme Tee and the Tulipan Tee is the fact that the sleeves take like, I don't know, 2 hours. They are so quick to knit, and it's such a satisfying progress to make when you knit this, because first you're working on this really potato chippy, like engaging lace motif, and then after you're done with the lace, the stockinette portion seems to be really quick as well, because you don't have to like count anything or like think about it too much. And then you split for body and sleeves, and it's just stockinette from there, and the sleeves again go really, really fast. And also the ribbing is super short, so overall, it's just a really satisfying project to work on. Like, you can see that the ribbing is, I don't know, I think I did 6 rounds of ribbing before binding off. I also didn't do a long tail cast off on this project, same as with my Palme Tee. Because Drops Belle, which is the yarn I'm using for this project, is kind of a dupe for Sandnes Lene, it has the same issue of at least my Italian bind off looking questionable. So this is what the yarn looks like. It's Drops Belle in the shade 02. This really nice ice cream or like pale butter yellow color, and I just really hope that my friend will like the finished object when I'm done with it. It also has a bit of a difference compared to the Palme Tee in how you'll do the yoke after you're done with the lace motif. You do these like raglan increases before you split for body and sleeves, which are not in the Palme Tee pattern. I can't really decide if I like the version without the raglan increases or with them, because mostly I'm not the one who will be wearing this t-shirt, so I can't really tell you a lot about the fit. I am really, really contemplating making another one for myself before the summer is over, but I'm trying to talk myself out of it, because I know that I will get sick of it really, really quickly, because as much as I rave about the pattern, I feel like I've been stuck doing the same set of instructions instructions with just a different lace motif for like 2 months, because first I made my t-shirt, then I'm almost done with Christina's t-shirt. I want to have the satisfaction of working on something that is newer to me than, you know, the pattern I made like 3 times before. So this is what the next project is giving me. This is my twist loop top, and I wanted to cast this on for a very long time, so I'm so happy to be finally working on it. As you can probably tell, I'm not making it from the cashmere I was supposed to salvage from a thrifted cardigan, because I have this idea that I need to make like a short video or a reel of me frogging that sweater, capture the process of frogging it, which means that I can't really do it in the comfort of my own like couch, you know, being in my pajamas, watching a movie with my boyfriend, just, you know, frogging away. I need to be more camera ready. I need to kind of plan my steps, which is just really boring. It sounds really boring, but I do want to make that video, so now I'm just putting it off instead of doing anything. It's just a healthy response, you know. But I'm using my original choice of yarn for the twist loop top, and this is an Italian cone merino. It's 70% merino, 30% silk, and it's a thread weight yarn. As I said before, I don't have any information about it apart from the fact that the color is called steel and like the yarn composition, so I wish I could give you more information, but it's a standard cone yarn. If you go to like a yarn store that have a lot of cone and like thread weight yarns for machine knitting and stuff, they usually have something similar. And I'm holding 4 strands together for my twist loop top, and I really like how it's coming out so far. I decided once I was done with all of the small bits with like a provisional cast on here and the small shoulder sections, when I went past all the fiddly bits, I decided to do the armholes and the neckline as soon as possible, just so I can kind of see it in its final form, so it's easier and more like motivating to work on it. And it bit me in the ass, because I finished this neckline. Like, I was working strictly on this neckline. I sized down to 2mm needles to have it look more neat. I did this like Italian bind off here. It's way too small. It's so freaking small. Like, I tried to get my head through it and I got stuck. At some point, I thought that I might need to like ask my boyfriend to cut me out of this neckline, which was really, really embarrassing and really stupid. I did manage to get it off, but my ears were so sore and so red for the rest of the day. It was just a traumatic experience. I don't know what I was thinking. Like, I was making this neckline, like knitting this neckline for 5 hours. I was watching Paper Skies, which is one of my favorite YouTube channels. It's from a Ukrainian guy who just talks about aviation, like the history of aviation. I love his videos, and I was so invested in them that I didn't stop even for a second to think that I'm basically knitting a cuff. I think for now I'm gonna leave it, and I'll come back to it once I'm done with the body. Thankfully, when I was doing the I-cord for the armholes, it came out fine. It wasn't as much of a fiasco as the neckline, but basically I just need to add a ton of length to this top, which, I don't know, I know a lot of people don't like working on like smaller needles and don't like these ribbing heavy tops for the summer. Working with fingering yarns frustrates a lot of people, but I don't really have that issue. I think I'm still gonna be done with it pretty soon, mostly because I do really want to have the finished object already, and it's a shame I couldn't try it on yet, you know? And I also really appreciate the fact that it's quite light, so I can take it with me everywhere. I also have the cutest stitch marker on here. It's this cat. I'm happy to see it every time I finish a round. It motivates me to keep going on this project. Another project I'm really happy to be working on finally is my Jenny jacket, which is going to be a slower burn, mostly because of the weather. We're in July now, and sometimes it gets way too hot to work on something like that. I cast it on a couple of weeks ago, and I'm really happy with it so far. I finished the back panel, and my next step is to, of course, cast on or like pick up stitches for the front sections. I was really confused by the instructions at first, because I was looking at the instructions and trying to figure out where is the part of instructions for joining the body and the sleeves together and starting to knit in the round. I spent like a good 10 minutes looking and reading through the instructions, trying to see if a page is missing or the instructions are incomplete before, you know, scrolling to the first page and realizing that I've been knitting a cardigan this whole time, and I actually planned and intended to knit a cardigan, so I'm just a little dummy. But anyway, I'm really excited to start knitting the front as well and seeing this cardigan come together. And as you may have noticed, I'm knitting my Jenny jacket from the cursed yarn that is left over after my Sirena sweater, because I have way too much of it for a regular project, but of course I didn't have enough to finish the cable sweater. But it's all in the past. I'm really happy that it's found its place in this project, and I wanted to hold it together with a white silk mohair, but then before I started, I made another swatch with just this yarn, and I actually liked it even more without the mohair paired with it. So I'm just slowly making progress on this cardigan, and same actually goes for another Petiteknit pattern I'm knitting, which is my cloud sweater. I finished the neckline and made some progress on the body, but it was one step forward, two step backwards situation, because this stupid yarn, Fibra Natura Renew Wool, which I'm using to knit my cloud sweater, even though I bought it in the same color and the same dye lot, still, like, one ball was different from the others. And of course, as I think it happens always when I have dye lot issues, I only noticed it after I knit almost a whole ball and I tried the sweater on, and the section with the new ball looked super pink compared to the previous ones. So I frogged back a whole ball of yarn. I just kind of lined up all of the yarn I have and tried to sort them in terms of which ones match the frogged yarn better and which ones match the work in progress better. And I'm not sure I was successful, because when you look at them like in a ball, they all look really, really similar, but there was definitely a change in the colorway. I'm still not even sure how this was even possible, but yeah, I frogged it. I tried to start with a yarn that is more closely related to the ones that are already knit up in this sweater. I don't have a picture of the difference in the dye lot, but believe me, it was there. I was just so annoyed by it that I didn't even remember that I need to take a picture for a podcast or like a little b-roll of it. Now, unfortunately, this sweater is on a negative progress, and I don't really feel like working on it now because it is really hot and it's a really, really cold weather garment. So this one is almost hibernating for now, because even if the weather is a bit cooler and I'm in the mood for a more, cold weather project, I will probably pick up my Jenny jacket instead, because it's a lot prettier and more exciting. By the way, I think again that this yarn is made for textured projects. I'm so bummed out that it's discontinued. I actually had a subscriber reach out to me and she sent me a link to like a wholesale yarn store website, whatever. It's, I think, Italian, and they had this yarn. Even on their website, it was discontinued, but like available for purchase. Like the leftovers were still available for clearance. So technically it's available somewhere, but I have so many bad memories surrounding this yarn now that when I saw the subscriber's message and the fact that this yarn is technically available, I decided to just shield myself from the thoughts that if I found out about it sooner, I would have been just able to finish my Sirena sweater with the yarn originally intended for it. But you know what? I'm letting it go. Like, I'm pretending that this yarn is discontinued everywhere, like I thought for a long time. And this was by far the most frustrating knitting experience I've ever had. And I'm so happy that I finally have a finished Sirena sweater and a work in progress that will use up all of this yarn, so I don't have to think about it ever again. And speaking of frustrating knitting experiences, I need to talk to you about my Chantal top. So, we're also kind of gently moving into my acquisitions section. So first I'm going to tell you about the yarn. I was able to get Gepard Garn Hørsilke, I think. I'm really bad at trying to pronounce this, but it basically means linen silk. This is the colorway I chose. I love this colorway so much. It's this really beautiful chestnut color and it has a wonderful silky sheen, but also some of the strands are a lot lighter than the others, so it has this beautiful, beautiful dimensional effect. And I bought it specifically to knit the Chantal top in the original recommended yarn because I liked the texture of the pattern picture, or like the sample on the pattern picture. I started swatching like the same day I received this yarn. I was really determined to start that project. I made a swatch on the recommended 4mm needles, and my gauge was 25 stitches for 10 centimeters. instead of the intended 30 stitches. So I was like, okay, fine, I'm just gonna size down to 3.5. I sized down to 3.5. I made another swatch and it gave me like 27 stitches and already the row gauge was smaller. So I sized down to 3mm needles for my final swatch and the gauge was like 29, 28, 29. So I was like, okay, I can make it work. And because of the row gauge issues, I had to do some calculations and kind of mix and match the sizes to make sure that my fit is the same as the pattern intends. I had a hunch that this project won't be the easiest to work on because I bought only 4 balls of this yarn. I wanted to make it more cropped, not because I really wanted to be cropped, but because this stupid yarn is expensive. I opted for just 4 balls of yarn. I thought that would be enough, especially because I went through some of the projects on Ravelry for this pattern and the yarn estimates matched what I thought 4 balls would give me. So I started knitting and I really disliked the fabric it gave me. It was really dense, like a lot denser than I think it's supposed to be. I started to notice just how quickly I'm running out of yarn for this knit. I think the back panel took a whole ball of yarn and then like the front panel and my attempt at the neckline took another one. So I decided to do the neckline just to see how much yarn it will use up. And the neckline in this pattern is folded. So I did the folded neckline and I absolutely hated it. It was really fluty, even though again I used the recommended needles. It was way too loose and I knew that I had to do a lot of surgery with elastic and a crochet hook to make it look neat. So I decided it's fine, I can just unravel the half of the folded neckline and do a really tight like long tail cast off instead, which is what I did, and it still looks horrible. Like, in my opinion, it looks horrible. Then I took a break from the neckline and continued working on the body. The more I knit on this project, the more I realized I just don't want to continue. It's not because I'm easily discouraged or anything, it's just I didn't want to use this yarn for a project I feel really iffy about. I wanted this yarn to be used for something special and something wearable. I was just really frustrated about this knit. And as you may know if you watched my podcast before, I already tried to knit the Chantal sweater from Moreca Knit, and I had pretty much the same issue with the tension. I ended up also frogging that project, so I had a lot of issues with my tension on that project, especially on like flat knitting compared to knitting in the round. I also had to size down my needles. Maybe it's the slip stitch pattern. I don't know. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Like I watched a couple tutorials on how to knit this sort of slip stitch pattern and like I'm sure I'm doing everything correctly, but maybe I have a really funky gauge or like funky tension when I'm knitting, which is a possibility, but I'm giving up on Moreca knit patterns, you know? Like she's a diva and I wish her all the best in life as well as the career that she has chosen. But if I had 2 patterns in a row from her that give me so many issues, even though I don't think it's an issue with her specifically. Like her patterns are really well written, they're super thorough, they're beautiful designs, but I don't want to deal with this, you know? So I'm gonna be frogging this. This is not frogged now only because I wanted to show you this, you know, ridiculous thing. And I think what I'll do instead is knit a top sole from Mochi Knits, which was actually gifted to me by a subscriber. She saw it on my wish list, or I'm not like assuming the gender or anything, but my subscriber saw this pattern in the wish list and gifted it to me the same day I decided to frog this. And I was kind of lurking on Ravelry to find a top pattern that I can knit instead. So that was a really nice coincidence. I'm probably gonna either make a top sole or maybe the Hope top, which I mentioned in my Cezanne video a few months ago. We'll see. I hope I can find a good use for this yarn because it is really beautiful. It does have a small drawback when you knit with it. It's this really loosely spun chainette yarn and it snags really badly, and because it's kind of knotted together, when you try and pull your needle through, if your needle catches one of the strands, it will just kind of knot them. You just have to pay some extra attention while knitting with it. Before I show you the rest of my acquisitions, I wanted to update everybody who were on the edge of their seats wondering what's up with my jade plant, which I found in the dumpster. mohair. This is what it looks like now. It got a little haircut and it has a lot of new growth. It's doing really nicely and I'm just staring at it sometimes. I just wake up and go to the windowsill and just look at it. I'm not that into plants, but this one just stole my heart, mostly because I feel really responsible for it because I saved it from the dumpster. I repotted it in this nice ceramic pot, and also it has some buddies here. It has a couple of succulents that I just stuck into it. I also propagated a lot of the stems and like little leaves I cut off, but unfortunately not a lot of them survived because I accidentally left them under the sun. Like when we had a heat wave, I just closed the curtains and they were basically stuck on the windowsill between the window and the closed blackout curtain, so it was not fun for them. They all turned kind of yellow and shriveled. Thankfully some of them survived, so now I have my own like jade plant farm. And also while I was repotting the original plant, I found a couple of coins inside the soil, probably because there's some sort of tradition that since it's a money tree you have to like stuck coins into it. I'm not sure. Let me know if you know what that's about, but I made like a hryvnia and a half from, you know, finding this plant. Before the sun hijacks me completely, it's really trying to, as you can see, I want to show you the rest of my acquisitions. And both the Gepard Garn linen silk and the yarn I'm about to show you arrived in one package, which is technically a gift from my dad, who really wanted me to buy myself some nice yarns for my birthday, which was really, really sweet of him. And since, as I said in the vlog, I don't feel like I need any new yarn, I decided to kind of spend the budget he gave me on a yarn that I won't be able to like buy for myself otherwise, or that I like don't feel is viable for me to spend money on. So I bought the Gepard Garn Hørsilke, and also I'm trying knitting for olive for the first time. I finally got my hands on some knitting for olive yarn. This is knitting for olive merino, and it's super luxurious, super soft. I feel very fancy just, you know, having it in my stash. This one is dark mousse, and this one is marzipan. I have a really special project for these yarns in mind. I actually wanted to buy the main color and the contrast color, and also the mohair for both the main color and for the contrast color to use together in a colorwork project. But when I added the silk mohair for the main color in my cart, I nearly fainted when I saw how much it would be. So I decided I would just find white or like off-white mohair somewhere else. I don't have to use like knitting for olive mohair, but I still wanted to try it, so I just bought the complementary mohair for the contrast color, and this is also in the shade dark mousse. I really, really like the fact that knitting for olive has kind of the same shade range or like shade card for most of their yarns, so they're easy to mix and match, and just the shade variety they have is beautiful. I know some people would say that, oh, it's too muted, it's too kind of sad beige and stuff, but just looking at that color palette makes me happy, so I'm absolutely fine with it. I wish more brands did this so it would be easier to pair the yarns together. I still can't really give you my opinion whether this yarn is like worth it or not, for me at least, and I know that objectively it is because of how sustainable the brand is and how like good quality the materials are, but I'm not as fancy as some of the other like podcasters. I'm not saying it to like pity myself or anything, but I'm just used to different like price ranges when it comes to my knitting, and garments made out of knitting for olive yarn are heirloom worthy, and they are really, really nice to wear and hold up nicely over time. At least as far as I know, it is worth it probably in the long run, especially if you count like cost per use and things like that, but kind of makes me feel awkward, like I'm being irresponsible with my money or something. So I need to really chill regarding knitting for olive and really just knit a project from it to see how I feel about it. I really want to at some point go to my local yarn store and like touch all the mohairs and like compare them to knitting for olive. At least I want to specifically see how it compares to Sandnes Garn and like Lanagato and Rowan. So once I conduct this little experiment, I'm gonna let you know my feedback, and The project I'm going to be using this yarn for is the porcelain yoke sweater, which I even printed out to, have a really fancy and special knitting experience with this yarn. And I couldn't stop thinking about this sweater after I mentioned it in my summer knitting plans video as something I'm not actually planning to do, and now it is in my plans. This sweater just started to live rent-free in my head, so I knew I had to cast it on, and it's going to be a lot easier than the regular porcelain sweater because the yoke is knit in the round and everything is much more straightforward. There's no colorwork purling and stuff like that, so I think I'm going to do a dedicated project vlog for this sweater. I've never done a project vlog before, so it's going to be really interesting to try and film one. And I made a swatch. This is not a colorwork motif from the pattern. I just wanted to knit something quickly to see how these yarns look together, and most importantly to see if the mohair I will be using instead of the silk mohair from Knitting for Olive will match the colors and the gauge. And I will be using the mohair that I actually intended to use for my Estonian lace shawl, but it's okay. I'm gonna buy a different mohair for it, or like find something in my stash, perhaps use the white Lanagato mohair that I wanted to put into my Jenny jacket. So I have to do some mohair rearrangement in my head. Since Knitting for Olive and Gepard Garn, for that matter, is not really available in Ukraine, I don't think we have any yarn stores that carry Knitting for Olive or Gepard Garn. I had to order it through my friend Alona, who kindly agreed to help me out, and also she put some yarns from her stash, which was really kind of her and really unexpected. So I got to experience my favorite type of yarn swap yet again, where somebody gives me the yarn and I just give them my thanks. So I got this Retrosaria Mondim, which is, in my opinion, the best sock yarn out there. You can, fight me on that in the comments, you can disagree with me, but it's true. Like, I don't make the rules. This is the best sock yarn. It's non-superwash, it's extremely soft, it's really durable, and also it can be used for such a huge variety of projects, not only socks, that I'm just really bummed out that I don't have it like readily available. I do know about some stores that will deliver it to Ukraine with like a higher shipping cost, but like it will get to me. But if it was available in my local yarn store, believe me, I would have used it for everything because it's such a versatile yarn. It doesn't have a huge like color selection, but quality and the fact that it's, again, non-superwash but not rustic and not like scratchy is what makes it amazing. And I was so surprised and so happy to receive it from Alona, because she just said that she will give me a sock yarn, and I didn't really know what she would give me, and I almost like squeaked when I opened up the package and saw that now I have a basic colorway of Retrosaria Mondim. But the problem with this yarn is that it's really hard to pair it with other sock yarns because it's a bit thicker, and again, it's not superwash, so you can see the difference in the texture. The superwash yarns are much more smooth compared to it, but still, I'm really glad to have it. And she also put in the package this Alpaca 2 yarn by Isager, and I was really surprised to find out that Alpaca 2 is not just Alpaca 1 held double, it's a completely different yarn composition. It's 50% wool and 50% alpaca. This is the color 23. It's beautiful pale green. I think I'm gonna do a small scarf out of this yarn. I'm not gonna pair it with anything or like use it for any sort of color work. I really like this color on its own, and I think 250 grams would be enough to make like a Sophie scarf or something. So that's a plan for next fall, I guess. Probably not right now. And the last yarn for today, which I also received in the best kind of yarn swap, but from a subscriber, was Isager Japanese cotton, which I mentioned I really wanted to get my hands on in the last video. I had a subscriber traveling through Lviv, and she offered to give me these 2 balls of Japanese cotton, which she wanted to destash anyway, and I, of course, agreed. I wanted to use it for my bag, which I'm still working on, my market bag pattern. You know what? Let me close the curtain. This is driving me crazy. Okay, that's better. So, as I was saying, I wanted to use this yarn for a market bag pattern I'm working on. I wanted to see if it will suit me for this project. Right now, I'm not really sure it would, but I'm yet to actually sit down and knit a sample from it. This yarn is so interesting. It's absolutely flat. It's pretty thin, but if you look close at it, it looks like 4 thinner strands of cotton like glued together side to side, and I'm really interested to see how the swatch will look out of this yarn, especially in the stitch pattern I'm going for with my market bag. And I'm really thankful to my subscriber Anya for distashing this yarn to me. I really appreciate it because I also couldn't find it anywhere here in Ukraine. Well, this better be everything I wanted to mention in this video. I'm looking at all of my acquisitions at the table right now, and it's a lot. It's a bit overwhelming. I don't usually get this much new stuff in like one go, so I guess the only thing left to do is just start knitting and turning this yarn into projects. I also really hope that you were able to get some knitting done or crafting done while watching this video, or at least got a chance to relax a bit. If you like this video, please consider giving it a like, subscribing if you haven't already, maybe share it with a knitter friend who you think might enjoy it. Also, please let me live vicariously through you for a minute and let me know in the comments what are your vacation plans. Perhaps you went somewhere really special already or planning to, so let me know. So far, my only plan is to go on a short getaway with friends from my knitting group. It's not going to be anything special in terms of location, but, you know, 3 days of just knitting and just chilling and drinking cocktails sounds amazing. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope I can get some productive knitting done while on the trip. I wish you a wonderful day. I want to thank everybody again for being here and watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.